What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. We've got another one of the videos from the MSU Deer Lab that we filmed with those guys down there, and today's video is all about nocturnal bucks. We're going to ask the big question, are bucks truly nocturnal or not? So you're going to find that out in today's episode. But before we get to the video, I want to let you all know we've got some giveaway winners from that giveaway that we did recently. Congrats to Brent and Josh. Hayden's already reached out to them to get them their prizes. Big thanks to everybody who participated. We had an issue with some scamming that was going on in that video, but rest assured, guys, if we're giving away something in a video, we're never going to ask you guys for money. If somebody is trying to get you to text them or email them and get money for shipping or anything, then that's a total scam. Pay no attention to that. Don't answer them. That's not really us. The winners of this upcoming giveaway will be emailed by Hayden. Be on the lookout for scams. There's a bunch of them going around YouTube right now, but that's not going to stop us from giving away stuff to you guys. And for this giveaway on this video, we're actually going to select two winners again. Both winners are going to get a free Deer School subscription for 1 year, an Exodus trail camera, and a THP merchandise package. And like I said, we're going to select two winners. How you enter, please go and like this video, please subscribe to our channel, and then go down in the description below. There will be a link down there that will take you to our website where you can fill out the necessary information to enter the giveaway. And like I said, Hayden's going to contact you whenever we pick the winners. We're also going to do another big giveaway once we get to 500,000 subscribers. Hopefully that'll be here in just a few more months. But we got lots more stuff to give away this summer. The prizes are going to be getting bigger and bigger up until we hit 500,000 subscribers. So big thanks to everybody who got us here. I remember when we started THP in 2017, basically broke, had no money for like a year and just traveled around hunting and filming hunts, trying to do odd jobs just to pay the bills. And now we're almost at 500,000 subscribers. It's unbelievable. All thanks to you guys. So we love you, we appreciate you, and we love doing these giveaways. That's enough of me jabbering. Let's go learn about nocturnal bucks.
One of the things, Aaron, that I see that I particularly think is a mistake a lot of hunters make is saying or classifying this particular deer, this particular buck is nocturnal because I am only seeing this particular buck on my trail camera at night over a big food source. You don't have any information on if the buck is nocturnal or not because it's only showing up at the food source where a lot of people are at, where there's probably a lot of hunting pressure at night.
And there may be a lot of other deer there as well, like an hour before dark. Yeah.
And where he feels secure in these patches of cover just may be further away. And it literally just takes longer for him to get to that food source, and you're capturing that event at night, and you're making the conclusion the buck's nocturnal. Well, he may have been up and about 2 hours before sunset.
Oh, yeah.
But
that's what we see.
You didn't capture it because you're only hunting on the food source.
Right.
So is there a buck that's nocturnal?
I don't think so, no.
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah, that's the title.
That's what we were talking about on the way down here, because we have so many people that say that, you know, he's nocturnal, he's been really difficult to hunt, or the bucks in these areas are nocturnal. They don't move during daylight after October 1st. You know, and from our experience hunting bedding areas on heavily pressured public land, we see exactly what you just said. 2 hours before dark sometimes, heavily pressured areas, and he's standing up and he looks like he is just at home, totally comfortable. But he doesn't make it very far.
Right.
Yeah. And it goes back to what is a good bedding area, that cover, and we talked about earlier, diversity of plants. And so the best cover is a diverse habitat that has lots of species of plants that provide that screening cover, because there's different growth forms and heights of the plants, and so it all blends together into a really good patch. But then also more diverse plant species gives food. So if you can provide screening cover that is also edible, why would he go walk out in the middle of the shooting lane?
Yeah, exactly.
Right in the middle of the day.
Right.
You know, they didn't get that old because they do stupid things like that. Only yearling bucks
That was
do
the
that.
next thing I was going to say is, so you guys can see the younger bucks and the does behaving in different ways than the mature bucks.
Generally, yes.
Yeah. We always have to say on the average. You know,
Okay.
I know people get tired of hearing that, but deer are truly individuals just like humans. And so there are some older bucks that do some weird things that we can't explain, but just on the average, yes.
If you look at any individual buck, none of them really cleanly fit into any category. They're all such individuals. You know, we've got sedentary personality, and we've got a mobile personality. But there is so much variation within deer to deer that's about as fine scale as we can get the personalities, sedentary and mobile, because they're all such individuals. Like,
But they're not, none of them are nocturnal.
but yeah, when y'all were talking about that earlier, I was thinking of, we did a social media post a few weeks ago looking at how deer move, the proportion of their points in food plots, for example, during the day versus at night on a low hunting pressure property, and kind of compared, you know, between ages of bucks and how much time they're spending in the food plot in the early hunting season versus in peak of the rut. And then I literally went out and looked in our data set, which has got 60 few odd adult bucks in it. I was looking for a deer. I was trying to find one, which is not what we do in science. We like try to take the averages of what's going on and draw conclusions that will apply to the deer population in general. But I literally went into that data set and tried to find a deer on a high hunting pressure property that was nocturnal, and it doesn't exist. Like you just can't find it. You know, there are some deer that move a little more and there are some that move a little less, but they are all moving. Now, the areas that he's moving in might change dramatically. You know what I mean? Like, if you look on the screen probably about right now while you're watching this video, you'll see maps pop up of a deer that is an individual deer, looking at his movements from October versus the peak of the rut on a high hunting pressure property. And this was one of the highest hunting pressure properties we had in the study that the docs mentioned earlier. And there's one area in the middle of this huge ag field that he barely even stepped foot in October. And this is a huge ag field. I'm talking a couple 100 acres. And there's this just chunk of a wood lot right in the middle of it that he barely stepped foot in October. Didn't bed in it a single time. He just crossed through it once. And then if you look at his movements, specifically his beds during the peak of the rut, he beds in that one chunk. I mean, it's maybe an acre. Maybe. Probably not even that big. He beds in it 7 times over the course of 1 week in the peak of the rut. And my theory is that because it's so secluded, hunters aren't hunting that little island of cover. They're in the big wood lot where the food plots are.
That makes a lot of sense from what we see all the time, dude. It's the same thing. That buck nest area, I keep coming back to that, but there's water, there's permanent water right there within 60, 80 yards of the majority of those beds. And it's in a secluded creek where nobody can see them. During the dreaded October lull, when everything is underground and, you know, nocturnal, we've watched a dozen bucks stand up in that one bedding area an hour before dark.
Yep.
Multiple mature bucks.
And y'all have been in these bedding sites. You've seen what they look like. A lot of hunters may not know what we're talking about. And just put in a little plug on the MSU Deer Lab YouTube channel. We have videos that we took in some of these heavily used sites, and in the same home range, the unused sites. We have videos of a couple of different bucks that we did a couple of years ago, and you'll see where these bucks are zoomed in. We even had a plastic deer that we put in the spot with big antlers to show how invisible the buck was and kind of the buck's view out.
So you would say, and I don't want to force you into generalizations here, but you would say often mature bucks are not nocturnal. Well, most, if not all, is what you're telling me. And they will get up and move and use the landscape during the day. They just use it on a tighter level. What was the word that we were using earlier?
Tortuosity.
Yes.
Tortuous.
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
So they basically, they have their bedding, their secure location for the day. They stand up, and often they just meander around that, I don't know what it is, 100-yard, 200-yard buffer. I'm generalizing here. But that's what you see out of these?
I'll explain it like this. I think this is completely safe for me, and Luke may come behind us here and analyze the data differently, and I'll have to apologize for being really wrong. I've never seen of going in and looking at these different bucks and looking at, are they only on their feet when the sun is down. I have never seen that with any consistency. So there may have been an individual buck, for example, on a particular day I looked at it, and maybe it didn't begin moving, or we could pick it up that it's moving on the landscape until 30 minutes before sunset. I mean, there are certainly some cases where they were in the bed for many, many, many hours, during daylight hours. But we never, across the board, see a majority of the bucks are staying in their bed from sun up until sundown. They are moving around well before sundown, and some still during sun up, after sunrise. Yeah, I don't see any pattern like that.
Do they have to, biologically or whatever? Do they have to stand up and drink or chew their cud or what? I don't. Or
Deer have several feeding bouts every day. Say 3 to 5, maybe 6. And so they're going to be up and they're going to feed. And think about what a deer is. It's prey. So prey animals, their main job is to eat, breed, and not be killed by a predator. Well, they can eat, and then during breeding season, they're going to maybe be a little different. They're going to spend more time looking for the breeding opportunity. But if it's not the actual breeding season, they're going to eat, and then they're going to hide. And so they eat for an hour and a half, and then they bed down. And they're going to bed in cover. And some of our recent analyses that Luke's been doing that's been put out on our social media, and you might have a link to that too.
Yeah, we can do all that.
Luke's done some really interesting visual presentations of individual bucks and showing 7 or 8 bedding areas within a week's time. So the old idea that they have just that bed site that they go to, there may only be one where you hunt, but
no, there's not. There's multiple.
Yeah. So they're moving around the landscape, feeding and then bedding nearby, and then getting up and feeding, maybe a few hours later or maybe 5 hours later. They chew their cud. They eat a lot. They don't chew it well, and then they go hang out and belch the food back up. Doesn't sound pleasant, but that's like cows do it.
Yeah.
And deer are
Their
ruminants.
stomachs are different, right?
Yeah.
Like they have a different type of stomach completely than what we do.
4-chambered ruminant.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So they chew cud.
Yeah. And so that's kind of, we look at it from the evolutionary perspective and so forth, but it is really a good survival strategy for them. And deer are a ruminant, just like cows are a ruminant or a buffalo or something like that. Their strategy is a little bit different because they select very high quality food. Mm-hmm. A cow's on a pasture. It's got a great big old giant stomach. It has got to eat a lot of food during the day because it's very low quality. A deer selects for higher quality food, and its name is called a concentrate selector. That's their little zoological category. But it works to their advantage is because they go out and cherry pick particular plants and parts of those plants, and they eat it really, really quick. They chew it very quickly just to get it down, and then you go find your bed and you ruminate. You chew your food. So it's kind of a survival strategy for them. They don't have to be out 8 hours a day like a cow to fill their belly. They can do it in just a few feeding bouts.
That's fascinating.
Visibility of deer is one of the kind of indices that a biologist can use when we go out on a property. If we're seeing a lot of deer around during the daytime, it's probably not a well-managed property because they're out a lot during the daytime. They're probably out a lot because they're looking for food.
They're hungry.
Well-managed property that has a good forage base, they're not spending a lot of their time walking around looking for food. They go eat and then they bed. So a really well-managed place, you don't see a lot of deer driving around in the daytime. Just don't.
That's interesting. You would think the opposite, honestly. I would have guessed the opposite. I'm always thinking, like, for example, here, I've been noticing a ton of deer in certain areas. We'll just be driving past open areas where there's like a field or something, and there's like 15 deer out there. And I'm like, oh, man, this just must be great deer habitat around here.
Absolutely the opposite.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
The only field in that instance it has access to is in that field. And the way I explain it, too, is why in the world when you're driving down a highway are there so many deer adjacent to an interstate
Yeah,
eating?
yeah.
It's because there's no food in the forest.
Right.
There's been no management on the
Clan-
forest.
Right.
It's
Closed
all by
canopy.
the interstate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Zach,
A
you were
deer
talking
doesn't
earlier about
eat by a car
sunlight.
whizzing by 80 miles an hour.
Right.
It does it because it has to.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't seem like a safe option. But I mean,
Not.
you see anything from fawns to gigantic bucks feeding in the middle of the night right along along a 4-lane highway. It's pretty insane.
That's their food plot.
The canopy thing is a big thing that's been on my mind in general for the last several years, hunting different areas in Appalachia, just big hilly timber. It's crazy to see how deer densities change dramatically when you're in these big open areas where, as far as like an aesthetic goes, yeah, the woods is beautiful when you've got these big oak trees and the forest floor is open and everything just looks nice. It looks appealing for the human eye. But deer don't necessarily want to live there. And if they do, it doesn't seem like the carrying capacity is nearly what it is when there's some sort of disturbance that has opened the canopy to allow the sunlight to hit the ground. And I just think that that's something that I see consistently in travel is just very, very overlooked from a management standpoint. Is they're
Think
just
about
not. I mean, a lot of landowners just aren't thinking about it, or they're not educated on it. It's probably a combination of both.
Well, think of examples too. This is like on our side we deal with go to a national forest or a wildlife refuge or something, and you have this really pristine looking forest like you're talking about, and they want to prescribe a timber harvest. And so many people are going to get upset because you're cutting down those trees.
Right.
Well, the wildlife biologists that are interested in the things we are like cut some of those trees down and get some sunlight on the ground and make some food for deer and cover for turkey, etc. But so many people have that image of that park-like forested scenario. It looks aesthetically pleasing, and it's horrific deer habitat.
Yeah.
Might be great for gray squirrels,
Yeah.
fox squirrels.
Yeah.
Something lives everywhere under every circumstance. What we have to understand is what are we most interested in and target species for a particular area. If you're managing for red-cockaded woodpeckers, you want loblolly pine 80 to 120 years old.
Yeah.
Forester would never like that because it's past maturity and you're losing money on the timber, and nobody wants to, the foresters want to harvest loblolly pine at 20 to 25 years, not at 120 years.
Yeah.
So public lands, I think in particular, have to worry about a whole lot of different public perceptions on what do they want from that land. Well, everybody wants everything from public land. It's really hard to focus on let's do the best we can for deer and turkey.
Oh, yeah, and to your point, like we'll take a specific piece of public land, say it's 500 acres, and there may only be 50 or 60 acres on that piece that has got really good habitat and that are what I would say really good spots to, catch a big buck outside of the rut, before that.
Yeah.
And once everybody figures that out, well, then those particular areas out of that 500, they start getting hit even harder. So your hunting pressure isn't evenly distributed across that landscape. Everybody goes where the deer are.
Right.
But the reason why is because the deer aren't evenly distributed across that landscape. They're only in certain sections.